Indianapolis veterans report for training camp on July 25th at Grand Park as the Colts look to reach the postseason for the first time since 2014. And so far, second-year GM Chris Ballard appears to be making all the right moves to get the job done. We'll take a look at his new coaching staff and roster as we preview training camp for the Indianapolis Colts by going one-on-one with Jake Arthur, Indianapolis Colts writer at Colts.com, on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's Wednesday, June 27th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we preview NFL training camps for the 2018 season with Indianapolis Colts writer and member of the Professional Football Writers of America, Jake Arthur. Jake, thanks for helping us talk Indianapolis Colts football today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jake. So, first of all, what does it take to get into the member of Professional Football Writers of America? It sounds pretty prestigious.
Yeah, I think I was just lucky at the time. It was somewhat early in my career, and I'd just been writing for a little while, and I just wanted to kind of fulfill the challenge, see if they would accept me, and basically all it takes is you go on the website and fill out an application. Just tell them a little bit about yourselves and your work, and they decide if they want to let you in.
Well, that's good. It's not a bad club to be in. And you've been with the Colts at their website, official website, for how long now?
I'm actually in my third week now with the official Colts website. Yeah.
So you like it?
Oh, yeah, I love it. It's definitely one place that I wanted to be an eventual destination of mine. And so, getting this kind of dipping my toe in the water here, I'm definitely enjoying it.
All right, let's get right to it then. As I said at the open, I really have so far liked what Chris Ballard has done with the roster since he took over last year, especially on defense, knowing what has been the Achilles heel of the team when Andrew Luck was going well. And then this year, also doing a good job of taking care of some depth, much-needed depth on the offensive line, and also continuing to hammer on defense. So is that the feeling with Colt fans, that they're very happy so far with Chris Ballard?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, more than anything else, there's a plan of attack, really. Chris Ballard seems, as transparent as he can be for a general manager. They have to keep quite a bit close to the vest, but he seems to give as much information as he can. He explains his plans. He gets very detailed about things. So it's really easy to relate to him and see the kinds of things that he wants this team to turn into. So there's definitely he's only in his second season now, but there's a lot of trust there already.
Yeah, and he made some good trades as far as the draft, accumulating those picks. He had 4 second-round draft picks this past draft, and he's got a lot of cap space. How is that looking ahead at what's on the roster right now, and with that cap space? Can you look at the future as early as next offseason? Do you see something specifically that they might want to use that money for?
Well, I think cap space in general, kind of for starters, Ballard kind of got a little bit of flack for not spending a bunch in free agency this year.
Okay.
But that's just not what the Colts want to do. They would rather accumulate draft picks and build their team that way. You can uncover some really good players and get them for a lot cheaper in that manner. But cap space is probably going to be more allotted towards re-signing their own players that they're interested in.
Okay.
If there is a more expensive player out there, sometimes that they really feel would fit their team, then we may see them go in that direction. Last year, someone like Jonathan Hankins was a great example. A little bit more on the expensive side, but he was someone who they really liked in their current scheme back then. But overall, it's going to be more about draft picks. That may be a slower way to build things, but it definitely helps sustain sustain excellence for a longer time.
Absolutely.
So it makes a lot of sense. It's sometimes not sexy because you can see big-name guys out there who might sit, and fans really want the team to go after them because they know they have the money and everything, but it's just not in their best interest to blow a ton of money on a position they don't feel is very important.
Yeah, especially until you find out for sure that Andrew Luck is back. And once you find out that Andrew Luck is back this season, he plays the whole season or a majority of the season, things might change in the offseason next year. At least he'll have the option where if he wants to pick up a key piece, because as we know, the quarterback spot's so important in this game, and they do. This team does have enough talent. I mean, even last year, as disappointing as the season was with backup quarterbacks, you're talking about a team that held the lead or was tied at halftime in 10 of 16 games. They had 11 starters out for injury, including Luck. And now they're just that much better with all the new young, fresh faces on the roster and a healthier Luck. So I would think some of the patient fans understand what's going on here, and it shouldn't be long before this thing is turned around as long as Luck stays healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been some frustrating times to have to go through, but when you really look at everything and contextualize why the Colts struggled, it's definitely easy to understand. I mean, like you said, there was a ton of injuries last year, lots of young players. A lot of those injuries were to starters. It's kind of hard to evaluate anything without a healthy Andrew Luck. And, some of the in-game decisions in terms of, maybe how their plan of attack went late in the game, they just kind of lost some juice and let a lot of those games go by.
All right, well, that is a different coaching staff. There's a new one. Frank Reich is on board, taking over for Pagano, and he's got some young coordinators. And Frank is a first-time head coach, so this is just going to be all new. But, hey, I guess if you're going to rebuild the slow way, the patient way, maybe you go out and do it with some inexperienced guys that you have faith in. And first thing is Reich, but also you take a look at the coordinators. Talk about the whole coaching staff in general and what you've seen so far compared to the previous regime.
Oh, yeah, this new coaching staff, they really seem to be a cohesive unit. They really want to feed off each other. Frank Reich, I don't think is going to be one of those dominant head coaches where everything revolves around him. He wants to hear what people want to say. Him and Nick Sirianni both come from a bit faster-paced offenses. They want to tailor things to the players that they have. They don't really want to fit any square pegs in round holes or anything. They want feedback from guys. They just want to be able to have everybody on the same page and going in the same direction. Sometimes with the old coaching staff, it may be communication. Before I was around, just watching on TV and things, it seems like maybe communication wasn't always there.
Okay.
And players were kind of put into schemes rather than schemes built around players.
Got it.
So far with this new coaching staff, it seems like it's they're just going to be tailoring things to a lot of their younger players and letting them play freely and do things that fit their strengths. And I definitely see that on the defensive side of the ball. They got a ton of young players, but most of them are pretty much prototypes for their positions on that side of the ball. The cornerbacks, they're going to be playing a bit more zone coverage. So they've got guys who are a bit bigger and rangier and who have ball skills because they'll be able to actually face the offense.
Okay.
This time around instead of having their back to them and things like that. So, they're just getting a lot of players that fit what they said they want to do, and it's a lot of optimism looking at that this time around. Yeah,
and of course the defense changes to a 4-3, and as you said, they want to get faster. And you talk about that secondary. Even they lose Melvin, who had a good season last season, and they did not add any DBs. So the outside fan might go, what are they doing? I mean, you lose maybe your best corner, and you don't add anybody. You look at the roster, and these are not household names. I mean, look, I've been following enough, though, to understand that there's talent there. And I thought there was a distinct possibility they wouldn't go after any top draft picks at that spot if everybody stays healthy, because there are some guys there that actually look pretty good, both before they came to the Colts and since they've been there, even though it's been a short period of time. But they apparently have a lot of faith in what they've got there so far. How is it going to work as far as mixing and matching with this secondary?
Well, they do like the players that they already had. Like you said, it was a little surprising that they maybe didn't add a defensive back or two, but it is an indication that they like what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that being said, things will be competitive in camp. Guys aren't just going to be, forced into being starters just because they were still around from last year. They're actually, everyone's going to have to earn what they've got. But I mean, they picked Quincy Wilson in the second round last year, who he was a lot of people's top cornerback overall and could have easily gone in the first round.
Yep.
Real shaky in his rookie season. A mix of things maybe between him and the coaching staff. And then he also had kind of a nagging knee injury.
Yep.
Everything seems a little better this year, though. He has admitted that he, maybe wasn't as mature last year, and then he had to change some things. And he seems to embrace the fact that he wants to be the number one cornerback on the team this year.
Okay.
But last year, the Colts, because of injuries, they got a lot of action out of Pierre Desir and Kenny Moore. So they got to evaluate those guys maybe more than they normally would have. And both of them played really good ball as starting cornerbacks last year. So they'll be in the mix. Nate Hairston was the Colts nickel last year, and he did really well a lot of the times, and he was even the most effective cornerback in the NFL at getting after the passer last year. So
okay.
He also has a dimension of blitzing. So they do have some really talented young guys. They're just not household names yet that people know about. They're either rookies or they've only played, one extensive year. The Colts know what they have, but, not necessarily people outside of Indiana so much.
And the same thing as far as the safeties. I mean, Hooker, football fans should know who he is, your first-round pick last year. And he did another play that got hurt. So how's he looking so far? What's his status? And then throw in some of the other players that received playing time. I mean, Fairley, this kid surprised a lot of people with the way that he played. So that's another player that got an opportunity to get some time. TJ Green seems like a player that is versatile, and that's a kid that's got talent. And you also have Geathers, who had that neck injury that he's coming back from. So talk a little bit about the injuries and how the safeties look right now.
Yeah, so ideally, Hooker and Geathers would be your returning to starting safeties. Of course, there's competition everywhere, but looking at on paper, those would probably be your front runners. Both they weren't participating in team stuff during practice during the off season.
Okay.
At least not on the field. They're kind of doing rehab with the rest of the guys who are recovering from things. Hooker did post some videos like a month and a half ago, just showing him backpedaling and running and cutting. So, that's optimistic.
Okay.
We have no idea who is going to be hitting the PUP list to start training camp at the end of July. We'll just kind of have to see there. But regardless, if they do start on PUP, they could even be taken off like a day or two later. So
sure.
All those things are kind of hard to judge. But, they're safeties. It's a relatively deep group, but just again, outside of maybe Hooker, people don't know much about them.
Nope.
Geathers, when he's been on the field, he's been a really hard-hitting player, really exciting guy. He can make some plays. And like you said, Farley has honestly been probably the most dependable safety so far. He's seen a lot of action the last couple of years. He started most of the games last year. Started out filling in for Hooker and then, started out for Geathers and then Hooker. So he wound up starting either safety spot for pretty much the whole year. So he's a really dependable guy. Maybe not Pro Bowl level, but he's an adequate starter for sure.
Not bad for an undrafted player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure. And then TJ Green, they're just kind of still seeing what they got there. I think they're going to keep him at safety all offseason this time. They tried him a little bit at corner last year. So just kind of open competition, seeing what guys can give them.
All right, let's talk about the linebackers because there's a good theme, and that is open competition. When you take a look at this unit, there really is. Is there a set spot for any of these players? Maybe just Simon?
This is probably the most wide open group. And if you're talking about John Simon, he's actually going to be a defensive end. So,
he is with the switch.
Coming into off season, a lot of us in the media kind of assumed that maybe strong side or middle linebacker was going to probably be his home. But they've been pretty adamant that they would like to see him compete at defensive end. So until notified otherwise, and we talked to him a couple weeks ago during minicamp, and that was still the theme. So, Simon on the defensive line again after being outside linebacker last year. The linebacker group is really wide open right now. There's really no one in any set spots other than some guys might be considered a Mike and a Will. Some might only be Sam's, things like that. We've seen a lot of Najee Good and Anthony Walker in the lineups, Tyrell Adams as well. They're really trying to get a little bit of everyone in the mix. Coach Reich said the other day that they're pretty much just using a rep chart. They're doing a lot of installs and things. They just want to see what they've got with some guys so far. I don't think they want to declare any starters yet, but Reich did say within the first couple weeks of training camp, we'll probably start to see a little more definition to the lineup at linebacker.
You think you could wind up also seeing an extra DB and go with two linebackers in some packages?
Yeah, I mean, in the NFL today, we see so many sub-packages.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see three safeties out there frequently, 3 or 4 corners. You just never know. There's such an emphasis on passing that you're probably going to see multiple, 3, 4 deep at corner or a few safeties. So that wouldn't be surprising. They did say that their Sam linebacker will probably see the least action, and that they're just going to focus on that being more of a run-stopping linebacker, or at least that was something that they envisioned within the last couple months.
Well, if it winds up where you have two main linebackers, regarding snaps, who do you favor? Because we also, you got to throw in Darius Leonard, your top second-round draft pick, I'm a Walker fan. Watched him play at Northwestern. And in his limited action, he seemed to make he made some, a couple of big plays, as you know, in that game at Baltimore towards the end of the season. So I like him. I think he's going to end up. I think he might end up with the most snaps in the linebacking group.
Yeah, Walker. He saw a lot of action with what could be considered the first unit at middle linebacker this spring.
Okay.
We'll have to see if that continues into training camp. But in an ideal world, I think those top 2 linebackers probably would be Walker at Mike and then Leonard at Will. Leonard, we didn't get to see him really do anything in practice on the practice field. He's been dealing with some undisclosed injury. So he's kind of just been rehabbing. They haven't said for sure what it is, but some have speculated that it was something with his hamstring that I think he had going on around the combine or pro day. But, in an ideal world, those would be your guys. You drafted both of them in the last couple years, Leonard in the 2nd this year and Walker in the 4th last year. Both fit the defense to a T in what their potential role would be. They just fit perfectly. So ideally, those 2 would grab the reins and, fulfill their draft placement.
Yeah. Like it, like Leonard. All right, let's go to the defensive line again. Now, this is the key to a 4-3 defense. And as you mentioned, now Simon moves there, Sheard moves there. You go out and the team drafts a couple of key rookies, Toure and Lewis. Lewis in the second, and Teray in the second. So they're going to be competing for playing time. And then, of course, you've also got a pretty, it looks like actually a pretty deep group of guys inside as well with Woods, Ridgway, Stewart, and Reed. So talk about especially the outside up front, because that's the key pretty much to any 4-3 front.
Oh, yeah. So Sheard has been a real dependable guy. He was one of the most productive pass rushers in the whole league last year. Only had, I think, like 5.5 or 6 sacks, but he was getting pressures constantly. I think they really want to see what they've gotten. Terrell Basham, also third-round pick last year. He got a lot of work opposite of Sheard this spring. So
I forgot to mention him. I like him. Isn't that work out better for him too? You know, he seemed to be miscast a little bit in the 3-4 defense. This is a better role for him, a better scheme, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he was drafted out of Ohio as a 4-3 defensive end. Had to learn a whole new role as a 3-4 outside linebacker last year, but now he's kind of back home in the 4-3 as defensive end. He seems a lot more comfortable. The health and fitness team has kind of started to tailor him a little more again to a defensive end. So there's a lot of optimism surrounding Basham. So again, third-round pick last year, that would be awesome if he could grab the reins and earn a starting role this year. But we'll have to see how that goes. There's been a big emphasis on the edge this offseason. Again, Kamoko Toure and Tyquan Lewis, those are both guys who should be expected to compete. Both really talented guys. They also signed Chris McCain from the Chargers this offseason, who really provided a burst for them off the edge. I think he had something like 7 sacks maybe, but definitely not a household name, but a guy who could provide a spark off the edge. So more than anything, they want to have just waves of guys that they can send out there just for a fresh attack at all times. Some guys may be considered starters, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to see 90% of the snaps. They want to get waves in there. Like Frank Reich really liked what he saw with the Eagles last year.
Okay.
Just constant pressure coming from new, fresh bodies. So that more than anything is kind of what I expect to see from the defensive line.
All right. Well, definitely more talent depth-wise than you've seen around here for a while, right? And that includes the interior.
Yeah. So the defensive line has been it's been a good looking spot for them the last few years, but injuries kind of wind up shaping things a little bit.
Yeah.
But the interior should be a new look as well. Jonathan Hankins was in last year, played really well, but just didn't quite fit what they were going for from the interior this year. They've added some guys in Danico Autry from Oakland, who looks like a really intriguing prospect. Raheem Nunez-Roches from the Chiefs, he seems to fit pretty well. Al Woods is kind of the old man of the group. He was really surprisingly good last year, and has continued to look the part so far in the spring. But yeah, and then let's see.
Who do you like the most, as far as the younger guys, especially Stewart and Ridgway, both 4th-round draft picks over the last couple of years?
Well, we haven't really seen much from Stewart, but the flashes that we've seen from Ridgway, I think he fits into this defense really well. It's maybe a 3 technique.
Okay.
I like him a lot if he can keep developing and kind of carve out a nice role in here. I'm really intrigued by Raheem Nunez-Roches as well.
Okay.
So we'll see what those guys can provide. They're definitely got their battles up ahead in training camp.
All right, let's switch over to offense, and we'll start in the trenches. And this had to be an important position for the Colts to address, even though a lot of it was injuries too. Again, you got Muhort injured, you got Kelly injured. Costanzo's the big body here at left tackle, so that's huge. You go out and draft Nelson, one of the top prospects, offensive guard prospects in years. So it looks like you have a formidable left side of the line now with Costanzo and Nelson. That's got to be exciting. And then you add a rookie in Smith. And bring in some free agents as well. You got Howard, you got Slauson, And then you've got guys that played last year, and now they're looking at as these are guys that will provide depth. So if you can stay healthy, this line can change. Is the look of the line? The talent could change dramatically.
Oh yeah, this is easily the deepest the line has looked in my time covering the Colts. You've got a good mix of proven veterans on there with some young guys, like you said, with Nelson and Smith, and then there were some guys that were already kind of excited about coming into this year that now, would be just considered sleepers. You got guys like Joe Hagan, Denzel Good, who provide really good depth as well.
Yep.
So yeah, as long as everyone stays healthy or relatively healthy as you can be in the NFL, there's no reason why this shouldn't be a really good offensive line. And something else that's going to take pressure off of them is Reich wants to get kind of a fast-striking offense in there. He wants to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, which obviously takes pressure off the line, keeps the quarterback a little more clean. So regardless, I don't see how we won't be a little more optimistic about the Colts offensive line.
Yep.
By years in this year than we were in years past.
And what is the latest as far as the health of Mewert and Kelly? Because that's huge.
Well, Kelly ended the year last year in the concussion protocol, and I believe in the spring he said he's all good from all that. So
okay.
he's been there in practice.
Okay.
Plenty. Mewert was in and out of practice this spring, but I believe he participated quite a bit. I think they were just kind of having maintenance with some guys who had injuries last year, just kind of trying to keep those guys a little fresh and not overworking them during the spring. So,
okay.
As far as we can tell, both of those players are doing all right now.
All right, let's talk about Andrew Luck now. And the last I heard, it sure seemed like he was very optimistic about finally getting out there and playing some football. And, he missed, of course, 9 games in 2015. And then all last season. But 29 years old in September, if we can believe it. That's how time flies. 33-15 as a starter his first 3 years in the league. The championship game, and everybody thought, well, here's the next step as a Super Bowl. Didn't happen, but and again, it is a rebuild. But if Luck can get out there and play, and as we said, that could change things and speed up the process. What do you think? Best guess. On whether or not you think Andrew Luck is going to at least be out there week 1 and looking the part?
Well, all we can kind of do so far is have some cautious optimism and trust what he's been saying, and he's been a little more transparent and definitely more optimistic recently than he has during this whole thing, since last January. So he kind of made no bones about it that he plans on being out there week 1. He's throwing now. Everything seems to be on course. He wants to be going full go during training camp. That doesn't mean, like he said, I think it doesn't mean he's going to be throwing 150 balls every day.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a plan. It's not necessary to have that heavy of a workload. But they're going to make sure that he's fresh at all times and that he doesn't have any limitations eventually. So. I understand, we just can't really trust anything until we see it.
Yeah.
That's most people's viewpoint on it. But,
sure.
If you kind of read around everything, this is way more optimistic than anyone has been about him at any point. And that includes all the people directly involved, him,
yep.
Chris Ballard, Frank Reich. Everyone is just kind of really has a positive attitude about it. So that's what I'm choosing to have as well.
Yeah, hey, look, I'm actually very optimistic, too, about what the Colts might be able to do this season. But, yeah, they got to get Luck out there, no question about it. Talk about the running backs because, look, if Luck can get better offensive line play than he's had before, which we just talked about, that should be the case, barring health. The next step is also balancing the offense, too. And the last 2 years, they've added some exciting running backs. Marlon Mack's going to take over now as the number 1 guy with Gorgon. And then Nyheim Hines was chosen in this draft. And this kid is fast, He can do a whole bunch for the team as far as receptions, kick returns. That's got to be exciting, and that's another position that has to be exciting Colt fans that they haven't seen in a few years.
Oh, absolutely. This is just kind of a young, unproven group for the most part, and then not having Frank Gore anymore, we just kind of have to wait and see what the plan is. Marlon Mack was also not participating in team stuff during the spring because he had a shoulder surgery of his own.
Okay.
Not real sure if he'll be out there to start camp. Haven't heard much about it. But we'll see. But on paper, you would think he'd be kind of the front runner for the starting spot. But when they drafted Jordan Wilkins, and I think the 5th round as well, Chris Ballard said he reminded him of Matt Forte. So, that's pretty high praise.
That's right.
I do think there's a couple guys who seem more like they would be starter types, or at least guys who just see the most touches at the end of the day, and that would be Mack and Wilkins. They both seem like that type. But then the other guys have defined roles as well, it seems. Robert Turbin, he's been one of the grittier, more effective short distance, short yardage backs in the league. He is excellent at pass protection as well. And then I think Nyheim Hines is just basically going to be a matchup nightmare. A couple weeks ago, offensive coordinator Sirianni just kind of talked about how, he reminds him of Dexter McCluster, who he used to have. Are they going to use him at wide receiver this week? Are they going to use him at running back? He's going to affect things in the return game too, I'm sure. So
yep.
They're going to be able to do a lot with their running back group. They maybe don't have one stud guy like a Le'Veon Bell or Saquon Barkley coming from this draft, but everyone that makes up their running back committee, they can wind up doing everything as a group that a running back group would need to do. So
okay,
it'll be interesting to see. We've just seen Frank Gore dominate the ball the last few years, so it's kind of hard to know what to expect quite yet.
But it is good. I mean, I think the fans probably you respect Gore. There ain't no question about that. But these younger, faster, shiftier backs just are more exciting. And as long as they do their job, like you said, whether it's pass protection, don't turn the ball over, just, as long as they do the little things, stay healthy, it's exciting. And I think that's I'm sure the fans are geared up for that. Talk about the tight ends. Eric Ebron was a failed first-round draft pick in Detroit, so we signed a 2-year deal with the Colts, and that is going to make things even better here because Jack Doyle, the undrafted tight end who took over as the Pro Bowl number 1 guy here, now he's got some company as long as Ebron can enjoy the fresh new start, and so far so good from what we're hearing about Ebron.
Oh, for sure. They definitely seem to love what they have in him so far, and all the things they can do with him matchup-wise. I think they're confident in what they can get out of him compared to what happened in Detroit. Just as a casual observer of the Lions, I don't think they really got tight ends involved all that much. I always thought Ebron looked all right when he was with the Lions. They may not feed him like a Gronkowski or anything, but
sure.
It just depends on what your role is in the offense. I don't really think Ebron and Doyle threaten each other too much in this offense. I think they're both kind of ready to work as a team, and
okay,
they're both different style tight ends. Doyle can be more of a blocker. He can eat up things closer to the line of scrimmage and the first down markers, while Ebron, he can stretch a defense because he's faster than most linebackers,
yep.
and he's on par speed-wise with a lot of safeties. So
yeah.
They seem to definitely have a plan for what they can do with both tight ends, and I think a lot of times that'll probably involve both of them being on the field. We've seen that in Sirianni's past with Antonio Gates and Hunter Henry. We've seen it in Reich's recent past, with, of course, Zach Ertz and Selleck and
right.
Trey Burton. So I don't think they'll have any problems finding roles for both guys, but they definitely seem to be excited for what they can do with them.
And for Ebron, a big difference when the expectation level goes up as a first-round draft pick, and can you be Gronkowski, as opposed to just being picked up as a free agent. You don't give the guy a lot of money. There's no expectations there. That's huge, and we've seen this. We've seen players that have struggled with those expectations in other locations before. They get a second chance somewhere else, and all of a sudden, especially if they're used differently, and like you mentioned, maybe that this is a perfect storm for the Colts and for Ebron, and that would be huge for the offense. Okay, let's go to wide receiver. And T.Y. Hilton, we know how special he can be. So the big question is, what about you lose Moncrief? So Grant comes in, and I mean he's a steady player, but you kind of look there past Hilton, and you go, wow, there's not a whole lot of proven, definite talent there. There are guys. I mean, the 2 draft picks. I mean, getting Kane where we were able to grab him. He's a talent. Fountain, very underrated talent as well. So tell us about what the expectations are past Hilton.
Well, it is a pretty wide open group. That's actually something I want to get tackling here in a bit, and some project is how wide open is the group. Hilton is, the only guy who is going to be at a Pro Bowl level. Ryan Grant, I think, is a safe option.
Yes,
I think they'll be perfectly fine if he winds up earning the spot as the second guy. Chester Rogers is a guy who holds a lot of clout inside the organization.
Okay,
he's proven quite a bit, honestly, on the practice field, but he just kind of had some unfortunate timing with injuries. He looked really good last summer. He was torching everybody. So he's a really interesting guy to keep an eye on. He's a lot more talented than what people have been able to see around the country so far.
Okay.
Deion Kane has also been really impressive this spring. So, I think they're just going to kind of let the best guys win the job. You would think behind Hilton that Grant and Rodgers, being kind of the veteran guys, will probably be the safest of the bets. But we could see Kane and Fountain turn it up. They were both draft picks, both very well-respected draft picks. They bring a pretty well-rounded game. They're both really athletic guys, so we'll have to see. There's also some guys below them, like KJ Brandt, Krishan Hogan. Let's see, Steve Ishmael from Syracuse, an undrafted guy. They've got a lot of unproven talent on there, so that's one of the battles I'm kind of more looking forward to this summer.
Who's the top sleeper of that group? Would it be Brent?
Are you talking about of the like lesser known?
Yeah, the guys that you just mentioned.
So I'd probably put Kane up there first, just because he's already been shown a little bit. But I do like KJ Brandt quite a bit. I would throw Krishan Hogan into the mix, but he too is kind of getting over an ACL surgery.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely think Kane, Fountain, Brandt are 3 to really keep an eye on.
All right, and by the way, Vinatieri back again, so we're all waiting for the day that he enters the Hall of Fame, and then Rigoberto Sanchez seemed to do a pretty good job replacing McAfee. So is the biggest question going to be the kick return game, and if so, is that wide open?
I think it's relatively open, but I don't think it's a concern for anyone, just because they know they have really capable guys who can take those spots.
Yep.
In my opinion, you kind of have to look at Nyheim Hines first, just because he seems to be the most explosive guy for the job.
Sure.
You've had Chester Rogers do it with success before, punt and kicks. Marlon Mack, he's another intriguing option. He's done it before. So it's just really about seeing who among your already talented players really grasps that role and makes things happen. I think more so you have to look for the preseason to see how that's going to go.
Okay.
Because surely they're not going to do just full-on collisions like that in camp. They may simulate some tackling, but kind of like offensive and defensive line play, in my opinion, preseason games are where you can really see things see guys separate themselves in the return game.
Last thing, Jake, and that is any sleeper rookie free agents that we did not discuss. Anybody out there that you think might have a shot at making the roster?
Okay. So there's about 4 guys that you could consider sleepers from the undrafted group that really might turn heads and surprise people. Sky Moore, for my money, he should have been drafted. He could have even been drafted, in the 3rd or 4th round. I thought it would have been okay. For people who don't know about his neck injury, they don't know why he wasn't drafted. So,
okay,
he's really promising. He's seen quite a bit of action during the spring, so I think the Colts really like what they have in him. Steve Ishmael, a wide receiver we mentioned earlier, he broke some of Marvin Harrison's records at Syracuse, so that always grabs some attention around here. Jared Machoro is an offensive tackle, just that kind of a thin group for the Colts. He's someone who you could see separate himself.
Okay.
He was a tryout, and then they wound up signing him, so he obviously proved something to them.
Okay.
And then safety George Odom. He kind of has made some plays and got some takeaways during practices, so he's been able to turn some heads as well.
All right, Jake, appreciate it. Great job. Twitter handle is Jake Arthur NFL, and we look forward to talking to you again a few times this season. It's, again, hopefully if luck can stay healthy, this is going to be a team that surprised some people, and I know the fan base is jonesing for another successful playoff run. So, again, thanks a lot. Great job, and we look forward to talking to you again down the line.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Jake. All right, that's Jake Arthur. And, again, Colts.com, Jake Arthur. And a great job there filling in everything we need to know about the Indianapolis Colts as they head to training camp. All right, we'll be back later today with more training camp coverage here on the Our Lads Football Network as we talk Cleveland Browns football with John Costco of Pro Football Focus. Don't forget to order a subscription of your choosing, including the 2018 Our Lads NFL Draft Review Guide right here at ourlads.com. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. You'll receive our on-demand media alerts for every OFN show and interview, including this one. And we've got many more of these interviews to go before training camp here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. For Jake Arthur and Greg DePalma, we'll see you next time.